Good morning. The September 10th, 2024 board work session is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, board. Dr. Rendell, can you please address the board and let us know what we have on the agenda for this morning today?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a short presentation or discussion on the voter-approved millage funds, and then we're going to go into a slew of policy reviews.
Wonderful. So the first item on the agenda is the discussion of the millage fund, which we will turn that over the floor to you. I believe you've provided the board with handouts. Everyone should have one in front of them.
Yeah, so thank you, Madam Chair. You have a stack of papers. The first ones are some brightly colored spreadsheets. What I wanted to do was discuss with the board and the public, because these are public meetings, some of the benefits of the voter-approved millage, and also just an opportunity to publicly thank the voters for providing us with these additional funds, and a short discussion of how we're using them to impact students and our staff. So the first one is you have some colorful charts that are about the different supplements. Most people understand that one of the driving forces behind asking the voters to approve this additional property tax millage was to provide funds for our employees, increased compensation. So 80% of the funds that are generated by the additional property tax millage go to compensation, and it's in the form of these supplements. So I wanted the board to kind of see some of these supplement ranges, and then obviously by us discussing it here in the public, that the public sees some of these supplement ranges, and it's really a huge benefit, a huge thing that we're able to do for our employees because of the voter-approved millage. So the first chart that you have in front of you is for the bargaining unit for instructional personnel, the BFT or teachers. And you can see that the supplements are based on years of experience, and a teacher can earn a supplement each year annually ranging from $7,800 down to $1,000. So our more experienced teachers are receiving a pretty good sized supplement in addition to their regular salary. We feel like we did a really good job with retention last year, and I think this is one of the reasons. Really good job with recruitment, again, because this is an additional incentive, additional monies that we are able to give our employees that nearby or surrounding counties are not able to. So huge thank you to the voters for this increased, these funds that we're able to give to our employees. The second chart, in the second page, is for the 1010 or classified bargaining unit. And you can see those supplements, again, based on experience or total years of service with BPS, range from $5,000 down to $500. So again, a good chunk of change that we're able to give our employees because of the generosity of the voters. And you'll notice that in every column on every page, the supplement has increased from last year. So we're able to give more each year because the property values are increasing, which is yielding a larger amount of money. The last chart that you have for you, with you is the non-bargaining personnel, mostly administrators, and you can see again, based on experience or years with PPS, an administrator can earn a bonus of up to $10,000, with the minimum being $5,600. The chart that you don't have in front of you is some other non-bargaining personnel, clerical staff, and some others that fall outside of the 1010 unit, and their supplements range from $5,000 to $500. So it's one of those things that we really don't talk about too much, and we probably should talk about more. This is a huge thing that our community has given us these funds, but really they're investing in the future of our community. When you invest in the employees in the school district, you should have a stronger school district, which should then have a stronger community. So, the first part of this discussion, really just wanted to share with the board these numbers, weren't sure if you guys were aware of them. And what I know that the public's not really aware of them. So just wanted to make sure that we shared the good news that the voters have given us this additional funding, and it's going to our employees in the forms of these supplements. And we really do think that's a reason we've been able to keep and attract so many employees. Any questions?
No, I want to thank you for bringing this up and bringing this to our voters' attention, especially right now as everyone's starting to receive tax bills and maybe seeing, oh, my taxes are higher, but what is that for and what does that translate to for our community? So thank you for reminding us of the value of investing in our children and our students so that we have a better community overall.
Yeah, and of course, our property taxes have gone up because our property values have gone up as well.
Right.
Not everybody, I'm sure not everybody, but in the majority. So that was 80% of the voter-approved millage goes towards compensation. The other 20% is divided into some other buckets. 16% of it goes towards programs and enrichment. So I want to talk about that a little bit. So the second document that you have, or not stapled, is the blue. There's a blue spreadsheet page. And we're going to talk a little bit about the category B1. So the different buckets of the millage funds are divided into different categories of things you should spend the money on. And so B1 is programs, performing arts, STEM, athletics, and enrichment. It's 60% of the 16% that goes into the area of B. So it's a good amount of money. If you can look there, the budget for this past fiscal year was $5.8 million. We estimated we were going to bring in about $5.8 million in this bucket. And if you look down at the bottom, we actually brought in an additional $45,000. So the amount was $5.4 million. So this was the bucket that really should be spent on things in B1. So performing arts, support, STEM, athletics, enrichment. So you may recall one of the decisions we made early on was to pay for all of the officials' costs for all of the athletics so that the schools then could just keep all of their gate money to fund their athletics. So you can see over in the fiscal year 24 box over assigned, that's the second line across, Mid-Coast Officials Association. So we budgeted $550,000 towards officials' costs. So we basically were relieving the schools from paying for that money. They were able to retain all their gate receipts and pay for other things like uniforms, equipment, transportation, things like that. And we actually only expended $539,103. So even came in under budget there. We'd also budgeted for a clerk position for the county athletic director. We actually absorbed that in Fund 100, so we didn't actually expend that full amount of money. We talked about and came to the agreement that we wanted to fund a STEM unit at every elementary school. So theoretically, we budgeted for that with last year's millage funds, $3.9 million. But we didn't hire any of those STEM teachers last year. We were, made the decision and started preparing for that. So that money was not expended last year. We also set aside $500,000 towards fine arts, fine and performing arts. We didn't expend that money last year. So as you can see, we really only expended the money for the officials and a little bit towards that clerical unit. So at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year for 2024, we've got $4.9 million in this bucket that is rolling forward or carrying forward to this year. So we have some things identified that we're going to do this year, but we didn't use any of the funds generated last year for that. So if you look at the second box, the fiscal year 25, you can see that our estimated budget of $5.892 million is what we expect to bring in with this year's fiscal year 25 property tax revenue. The roll forward or carry forward from last year of $4.9 million, theoretically we have $10.8 million to spend in this bucket, this year or in future years. As you can see, we budgeted for the Mid-Coast Officials Association again at $550,000. That actually might increase a little bit because the Mid-Coast Officials Association all got raises for this year, so it might cost us a little more. We've budgeted for the 56 elementary units at a little over $4 million, $4,069,000, because we gave everybody an increase, so it's costing us a little bit more for the STEM units. We again have budgeted the $500,000 for performing arts. We also presented to you last year, towards the end of the year, the idea of having athletic trainers, full-time athletic trainers at all of the high schools. So we've budgeted for that out of this bucket at almost $1 million, $999,620. We also talked about maybe doing some unique supplements for CTE positions. So we've budgeted for that in this area of B1 at $213,914. So it's $6.3 million in expenses this year if we were to fund all of those things and they were, to cost that amount. There's still this carry forward that money we collected this past year and didn't spend. So we had some ideas we'd like to discuss with you, share with you, and get your feedback on. The first one is we've really had some great summers recently with summer enrichment camps. About 3 years we've been doing this, and they really took off 2 years ago and this past year. All those summer enrichment camps, all those programs were paid for with ESSER funding, ESSER money. And the ESSER money is no longer. We are no longer going to get any more ESSER funding. So originally we thought we're not going to have the ability to fund these summer enrichment camps, all these summer enrichment programs. So with this roll forward in the bucket of B1, performing arts, STEM, athletics, enrichment, we could use some of that roll forward to pay for summer enrichment camps for this coming year or this current school year, this coming summer, or future summers and that kind of thing. So I'd like to ask the board for some direction on that. If you think that's a good use of these funds, then we'll start to put together a proposal for that, how much that would cost, how much we've spent on summer enrichment the last couple of years, how many kids were affected, that kind of thing. So looking for some direction on that.
All right, board, would you like to weigh in on the conversation? Anybody? Don't all jump at once.
Gene looks like he's trying to get at it.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to say, one of the things that we did when we had our ESSER funds was we invested considerably in the arts, and the performing arts got a large, I think it was either $2.5 or $4.5 million investment to offset some of the costs. Our equipment was in a really bad shape. So I think that this is awesome, the way that we're counteracting and then bringing in some of the other areas that were needed. And I just did want to reiterate, those STEM positions were not in the system already. This is outside we hired them from this. And then those athletic trainers are new positions too. It's just a really good overview. I really appreciate it. Thank you. That's it.
So I'm going to address your actual question. I think it's a no-brainer that families benefited from the summer enrichment programs. The reception from those programs from our families was nothing but pure positivity from the staff members who participated, and it was nothing but positivity. So I think it's really beneficial for our kids. It's not only relieving a burden on the community to have a safe space for their kids to go, but it's also obviously focusing on academic achievement and social development of our kids. So I think that's our primary concern. So you've got to go ahead from me for that one. The one thing I do want to bring up for us to consider, and I don't know the dead date on this, but the Summer Fine Arts Program, which is beloved by our fine arts students and the community, that puts on 2 shows every single year, was being funded by a foundation that was ending at a certain point. I don't remember if it was 2025 or 2026.
I believe it's this year. We
Okay.
have one more year.
Okay.
One more summer.
So I just want us to consider that.
That was next on my list.
Okay, sorry. I think it was a significant sum, so I'm not saying that we can, compensate the entire thing, but for us to plan ahead to not take away something that people really, really look forward to, all across this county coming together. Thanks.
Gene?
No, I can just echo the same as, I hope we can supplement or even further enhance our summer enrichment. I know with some questions on a few of our summer enrichment camps, when I took a deeper dive into the approval of the curriculum, there wasn't much there.
Right.
So I'm hoping if we're going to invest more into it, that we can also have that part of it where there's more of a deeper dive into the approval of the curriculum or just the things that are being taught during those camps?
Yeah, so one of the ideas that we came up with about midway through the spring last year, so a little too late to implement last summer, was to have some CTE boot camps. And so, we would open up our CTE labs over the summer for students who don't normally have access to those camps. Maybe they can't fit them in their schedule, maybe you've got, a high academic load, your IB or ACE or something like that. You've always wanted to take the automotive technology class, or at least learn a little bit about automotive technology, so we'd open up those labs in the summer and have some CTE boot camps, as well as just other enrichment programs. But yeah, I think we're if we're going to use this voter-approved millage for that, we want to be kind of targeted as to what we're offering.
So Dr. Rendell, just to clarify, you're going to present back to the board what the estimated costs are, as well as the data on the participation of the different summer enrichment campsites, correct?
Yeah, I think, if the board says, yeah, explore this and bring something back, that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely would love
Explore.
it to be explored and bring it back. So again, we heard nothing but great things. I was able to visit a couple of the summer enrichment camps. I think the ones that were taking place at the high school were really cool because they had a lot of incoming middle schoolers that were going there. So it kind of prepped them and got rid of all that, oh, I'm going to a different school and I'm worried about what it's going to look like. So I think it's a great thing to explore and bring back some data. Do you feel as though you have good
Yeah.
board majority to
Yes.
move forward? All right.
So the second thing that I was going to talk about was basically what Mrs. Jenkins was talking about. We have some additional programs, enrichment, mostly in either fine and performing arts, that are additional programs funded by outside grants. And some of those outside grants are going away. The Brevard Cultural Alliance lost some of its funding. Some of these other grant sources are going away, and we don't want these programs to go away. For example, the Artist in Residence program in elementary schools, where either a musician, a local musician, or a local visual artist spends some time in the elementary schools, giving our kids some direct instruction on some really unique either performance techniques or artistic techniques or whatever. It's a supplemented program funded by a grant. And so I'd like to, we said we're going to do 500,000 towards performing arts. I don't know what appetite the board has for setting another chunk of money aside for any of these programs that may be sunsetting, to make sure that we're able to continue those. So Summer Fine Arts is a great example. We believe the funding for that's going to end after this summer. So we could say, this bucket, again, it says performing arts, STEM, athletics, enrichment. That's what the money's supposed to be used for. So if we want to, the board direction is to identify any of those programs that are sunsetting or have sunsetted that we want to try to fund with this, because the outside funding's not there. Just looking for direction on that.
You absolutely have my support to explore those. Any of those programs that have been successful and been so beneficial, not only just the kids, but the community as a whole. I think so many people came and participated in watching the plays that were performed. And so you have my support 100% to explore what things are going to be going away and how we can make sure they're not going away. Board?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's important when you come back with a proposal for some of them to consider flexibility or like preparing for like the burden or the ask. So for instance, I'm going to mess up the name of it, but you just mentioned it, the one where the artists are coming to the schools.
Artists in residence.
Yeah. So that one's kind of, we can't predict how much that costs, right? And it depends on what they're asking for and things of that nature. So, maybe capping it at a certain amount, things of that nature, things that we didn't have to deal with before because
Correct.
they were being funded by other programs. But there are some things that are concrete, like fine arts. So if you can kind of be specific about it, so that way we don't end up with, my program was supposed to get this and I didn't get that opportunity, things of that
Yeah,
nature.
I think that we had an initial conversation with the Brevard Cultural Alliance about 3 months ago, where they said, hey, we're losing funding for this, we're losing funding for this. This is the last year we're going to be able to do this, this last year we're going to be able to do that. So we'd have a follow-up meeting with them and say, okay, let's look at the list again. How much did those programs cost? Do we think those programs are valuable? If so, then we put them on the list.
Yeah, and just so if I feel like no one watches our workshops, but if anyone's listening, just so you understand what some of those programs are, I might get the school wrong. It's either West Melbourne School of Science or Discovery, somewhere in that area. There was one of the most extensive ones that I've seen is an artist coming in and working with the students for months on like broken tile mural across the wall in that school, and it was just like absolutely stunning, but it was wonderful because the kids got to participate in that
Right.
for a very long time. And it became a part of the community, and parents came and volunteered. So it was really, it was more than just an art project. It was everything for the community to come together.
Ms. Wright? May I? So one of the things when we did that summer enrichment, because I visited a lot of the schools, talked to a lot of the parents, we had a couple of them that were coupled with outside organizations. For instance, the scuba certification that was on at Rockledge High School had a couple individuals that were there from other organizations. And if we look at possibly next year when we're moving on some of those summer enrichments to include some of the aquatic safety that we talked about, maybe, you know what I mean, working in those realms of bringing organizations and groups together to offset some of the costs and have some of the teachers, like one of the things we have in like Melbourne is they expend funds to do some of the same stuff we do, so we could collaborate on some of those activities with them. Fire schools and stuff like that we talked about before, getting those kids moving. So I think it's awesome. I didn't hear one negative thing about the summer enrichment, and everywhere I went, the kids were happy. They were doing archery at Ralph Williams. You know what I mean? And I walked out there, and there was kids holding bows and arrows, and they were shooting them, and everything was great. And I just really appreciate that. So
Were they rubber tipped?
yeah, they were safe.
Completely safe. Mr. Trent, do you have anything to add? No? All right, I think you have the blessing of the board, it sounds like, to move forward.
So there's only one more thing we want to talk about, and it's actually access. So that was the one criticism I heard from our community about some of these programs is I don't have access to that program because I don't have transportation to get to that program. And so when we've been talking about providing access to these programs and other things, we had the idea years ago, actually, of providing some additional transportation vehicles to different schools that could provide them access to different things. So I'm going to ask Mr. Raymer to come up and give you guys a presentation on some multi-passenger vehicles that we were looking to maybe purchase with some of this money that would allow access, not just to these programs, but to other programs. This is an idea that we've been discussing for several years, and it's something that's in place at a lot of school districts around the country. We just haven't done it here. But the idea would be to assign certain number of multi-passenger vehicles or vans to different schools that they could use for small group transportation. And Mr. Raymer's been working on this for over a year. And so I was going to give him the opportunity to do a presentation for you. And then we'll talk about that.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell and Madam Chair and the board for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you today about some of our access matters regarding programs, enrichment opportunities. I also want to say thank you for your support of the Summer Fine Arts and the enrichment. Those were very robust programs while I was a principal, and it was great to see them on the school, and the school truly benefits afterwards. So thank you for your support on pursuing those options. So for my presentation, I'm going to talk to you guys about enrichment and events, activities, multi-purpose vehicles. I do want to take a moment to thank transportation. Dr. Miller, Mr. Wilson, Jefferson Smith did a ton of work with me on this matter just to make sure that we were potentially moving in the right direction. So I'm going to give you guys a background of the ask, the proposal, the functionality and utilization of how these multi-purpose vehicles would be used within BPS and our schools, what the funding would look like, and then I have several slides that you guys should have that are in their words. So I reached out to principals, coaches, athletic directors, ROTC instructors, and asked them how this would impact their program. What would be the success of this? Is this a necessity? And how would you view this coming onto your campus and having a higher quality, accessible, multi-purpose vehicle in order to make sure that students have access to all the necessary programs? So our current background right now is that transportation is an ongoing concern with regards to school-sponsored activities, events, competitions, academic assistant programs, and anything else that goes on within the school. Once again, it's been a consistent, ongoing concern. So currently, we operate with students, sponsors, coaches, anybody being a part of co-curricular, extracurricular, student-based activities, events, and our academic assistant programs. With students really driving themselves to most of these, perhaps walking long distances because they rely on BPS transportation, and if they stay for after-school tutoring, they miss the bus, or if they want to come to before-school tutoring, they don't have the available vehicle to get there. Parent transport and or carpool, so we ask our parents to do a lot of the work for us, where they have to transport students to and from different events, to or from different district-sponsored activities, And then they also carpool to get students to the necessary location, once again, for our co-curricular, extracurricular events, activities, and our assistant programs. And then vehicle rentals. So once again, we are able to rent vehicles, becomes a cost burden for the schools. Also puts a little bit of work on staff in order to make sure that all the paperwork and everything is in place to make that happen. So our current practice right now, with all due respect, is fairly inefficient and ineffective, and it actually creates barriers to students participating or being able to access certain events and activities on their own campus or in surrounding areas on the campuses, et cetera. So here's the proposal. The proposal is that we provide each high school and combo school with 2 10-passenger vans that would accommodate 1 driver and then 9 students. And whenever I met with all 16 principals, they were in strong favor of this initiative. Every one of them thought that this would be a valuable asset at their school and a valuable way to utilize funding in order to support students. Vans would be housed at the school locations to be used at their discretion. Would be worked through with the administrative team to make sure that they were being used with equal access. And they would also be able to be shared with the feeder schools that are in their area. So elementary, middle schools, if they have something and the vans aren't being used, would be able to share them and make sure that they have access to other activities also. School staff would complete the necessary training. So there's a training that goes on with our transportation department. So our school staff would complete that training and make sure that we are in compliance with all regulations. And they would be used to remove barriers that are present due to current practice. And then they'd also be able to use for attendance matters, home visits, professional learning opportunities, community meetings, and any other type of school-based activities. So some of our functionality and utilization that we would be able to, I just have a laundry list of ways that we could use them. So won't go through them all, but obviously we're looking at after-school tutoring activities, college visits, transportation for travel, for band, orchestra, chorus, all county events, Saturday testing to ensure students have equal access to testing opportunity, SAT, ACT, or CLT, JROTC, student award ceremonies and recognitions, obviously science fairs, recruitment visits, club travel. We have innovation games, Odyssey of the Mind, district sponsored events, which are usually smaller groups, which this van would be perfect to get those students there. Our academic team that comes up here on Monday nights, students from all different high schools. In case you were not familiar with the practice, you have 5 to 8 students from all the high schools participating, driving up and down 95 to get to the board office. That's how they arrive. They don't arrive typically as a team. They arrive as individuals. Job shadowing, CTE, college visits. And we keep going, obviously home visits to ensure student attendance and to have a better, robust practice for schools to help students get to school or at least have that contact with the parents and families. Making sure that our yearbook summer camps are taken care of, attend community meetings. We have our moving of equipment, graduation, homecoming, prom, where a lot of our people are using personal vehicles or trying to get stuff from A to Z. Students are having to transport different stuff to different venues as opposed to having reliable transportation on campus. Obviously, our small athletic programs that are typically golf, tennis, baseball, softball, et cetera, that would fit in 2 vans, so 18 or less. Would be able to utilize them for certain events and activities, especially as you continue to progress, like track and field. When you progress to the regionals and states, usually you're taking 2 or 3 kids. Cross country is up in Tallahassee, and some of the schools are having students transport themselves to Tallahassee, or parents transport them to Tallahassee to participate in events such as that. Summer programs, like we just discussed, right? Being able to help students access summer programs, other field trips, and then foreign language competitions. Latin, French, Spanish are just some of the examples that we have on our campuses. And then, also art shows, and a wide variety of opportunities for our students that they may be participating in, but are struggling with access in order to get to those events and activities. So I'm gonna stop there if you guys have any questions just on different functionality, utilization aspects.
Board?
Thank you for doing this. And it's long overdue. I mean, when you say some districts, I don't know many schools that don't have vans. that for their sporting events, for their activities. I've worked at a few high schools in a different state, and I can't tell you how many times the words that come out of our mouths is, "Where's the van?" We've always needed it, for certain things. And when I first was introduced to Brevard, and we didn't have vans and we didn't have transportation. Just the safety factor of us not having kids going up and down the expressway, the highway, parents that work and, the kids who knows what car they're jumping into. That's been a worry of mine for a decade here. So I'm just happy that we have the ability to explore this possibility. But it's going to be, it'll be great for the staff, the students, the parents. Thank you for looking into this. So it's a big relief for me.
I think the biggest component that I had when I was teaching, I would sponsor 8 clubs. I was always coaching. And when we would go from place to place, the liability that's put on those students is this fixes. And that to me, more so than access and everything else, the liability of the school district for students, like Gene had said, Mr. Trent had said, about jumping into a car with somebody else, or that poor kid who doesn't have access to the school, to the facility that they're going to go play at. They've got to catch a ride, and it just that's a tough spot to be. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you.
I was gonna let you finish before I. But,
Oh, no, you can, I was just curious if you guys had anything on the utilization aspect, and then I can finish up. And then
Yeah,
go
I'm
to
gonna.
questions.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna wait until you're finished. Is
Same, I
okay.
have a couple questions
Yeah.
too, but I'll wait till the end.
So if we go to the actual funding side of what this would look like, so as we dug deeper into working with transportation and seeing how we would be able to make this happen for our schools, it would be 32 total, 2 for each high school and combo school, so 16, and then each of them will get 2. There's the cost per van, $60,034.68. So the total cost is $1.921 million. And the funding source would be Millage Enrichment, as Dr. Rendell had discussed, along with the other resources that we just talked about for summer enrichment and fine arts. And then the van acquisition would also help reduce some workload on several key staff members, once again, as we do vehicle rental, as we do some other aspects of trying to secure vehicles for some of our groups or smaller teams. It would reduce the workload on those individuals. So I had some principals when I was talking with principals and presenting this out to them and working through what this may look like, how we could go about trying to make this happen for each school, and what would be the impact on safe, reliable, and effective transportation, right? That's our goal for our students, safe, reliable, and effective transportation for access into programs. Some of them reached back out to me and said, hey, I just wanted to, kind of piggyback on our conversation and talk a little bit more about how this would impact our schools. So this is one of our principals, just talking about how it would allow their students to fully engage, regardless of economic background, the reliable transportation for after-school activities, sports, extracurriculars, co-curriculars, and how impactful it would be, along with the community involvement. And then obviously the 4th paragraph, owning our transportation will provide a safer, more reliable alternative to students relying on inconsistent and potentially unsafe transportation methods, giving parents peace of mind knowing their children have a dependable way to and from school activities. So there's just a little bit from one of our principals of how they would utilize the vans, why they believe that they would be impactful to their school, and as we could break down that barrier, creating a pathway for all students to access the full range of educational opportunities. Second one is, again, from a principal. This one is talking about some of the ways in which they would utilize the vans. As you see working down there as a Title I school, my students are often limited in their ability to participate in certain academic extracurricular events by the fact that they lack the transportation needed to get to and from school activities and events. So they talk about access to smaller things like Odyssey of the Mind, Innovation Games, JA, Stock Market Challenge, that this particular school has not participated in due to some of the barriers that are in place. And then they talk about the SAT, ACT academically. This is one of our schools that actually got an I for school grade. So being able to help students get to Saturday SAT, ACT testing, helping schools get to students get to testing on the school campus to reduce the I. Once again, ACT, SAT to improve graduation rate and to give all students the equal opportunity for the testing opportunities that are present there. They talk about Model Student Senate, ROTC, SGA, choir. Really excited about the opportunities and possibilities. This is a long one, so I'll just sum it up. And there were another principal just talking about some of their speech and debate programs. They have a Best Buddy program and the field trips that they try to take to foster the inclusiveness within their campus and how this would be impactful. They talk about dual enrollment and how we'd be able to get students to and from some dual enrollment activities. I also talked to another school, our Pirate to Panthers program down at Palm Bay, which is a consistent van just looping to FIT in Palm Bay. How that would help. This particular, in their words, is not from Palm Bay, but when we talk about dual enrollment, that would definitely be of assistance. They talk about their clubs, athletic teams, musical programs, supporting students that are academically deficient and making sure that they have opportunities to after school, before school tutoring, making sure that we have more robust attendance opportunities, and then again, making sure that we get the testing opportunities taken care of. One more from a principal, talks more about their student councils and being able to attend those meetings, some of their after hours obligations. Once again, reoccurring theme that the students have to travel themselves and some of them have transportation barriers or concerns. They talk about the at-risk students with high absenteeism and being able to do more home visits and talk more with students and have a vehicle to actually get students to help them get to school. It doesn't mean that this will become how we get students to and from school. It just becomes an opportunity to get them back into the doors and talk more with the family about how we can get consistency on the campus. We got a club sponsor. This was one we talked about right here with the academic team, right? The academic team must arrange transportation for team members to and from competitions, ESF on Monday nights. So once again, students having to come here from all different schools. They talk about science research, the Brevard Mainland and Engineering Fair at the end of January. And they have a new club that they believe that this would assist also. So this is a club sponsor for those three different clubs on the campus. JROTC, talking about how many community service hours they get, but at the same time, how they have to turn down community service opportunities because they don't have the transportation and or the ability to take a larger group. So they talk about access to vans will allow us to increase cadet participation opportunities by 75%, because currently they're operating on if it's 5 or less. But with a 10-passenger van, they'd be able to increase the number of students participating and also be able to maybe take on more requests and events that are in the community. We have a coach that talks about the safety, convenience, and team unity that comes with being in the vans and having a reliable mode of transportation and safety of students. The convenience of being able to make sure that they don't have to arrange transportation. All kids are getting to where they need to be when they need to be there. And then obviously there's a team unity aspect and a student unity aspect that comes with traveling together and being a part of the club together, being a part of the team together, being a part of the extracurricular together, and making sure that they have those opportunities to connect. So a little deeper connection there for students that are involved. And an athletics and activities director. Once again, our athletic directors at the school also oversee activities. So activities and athletics director talking about a lot of the ways in which they would be able to use the vans to support their programs at their school, ranging from future problem solvers, speech and debate, going into some of our smaller activities for athletics. Then in addition, we also have to keep in mind that sometimes we have triple headers for basketball. Sometimes we have, that for volleyball, and all students, if we take a bus, have to leave at the same time. So we're pulling kids out of class. This will allow them to transport at different times and get students to where they need to be, maximizing instructional time in the classroom. And then having some of the access down there at the bottom. I thought this was interesting, the overflow for Grad Bash. So this happens every year. You basically order like 2 buses, I'll say, for Grad Bash. They can house, we'll say 90 kids, and 97 students sign up. And you have to find 7 students and say, you 7 can't go, right? So this would alleviate that burden by having another smaller opportunity with a vehicle to get those overflow students to those events so that they can fully participate. And that takes us to the end. So I thought it was important to walk through, obviously, why this is a need, safe, reliable, effective, efficient transportation, access to all of our activities, how schools would use them, obviously the funding side of what this would cost the district, And then important for the qualitative data side of how schools view current transportation methods and how the vans would help them with their transportation to all different types of aspects for schools. I do have some data from the Florida crash dashboard. So just so everybody's aware, in 2023, there were over 9,000 crashes in Brevard County with almost 7,000 injuries. And we know that 5% of our drivers on the road are teens, but they cause over 10% of the accidents on there. And a lot of it's due to driving with friends, being distracted, other things that go on in a vehicle when they're driving up and down the road together. And then in addition to that, currently we have over 1,000 seniors that are test deficient, that if we were to graduate tomorrow would not have the testing to graduate. So in addition to all of the aspects that we talked about testing, making sure that these students have every opportunity and we don't just talk about, here's a waiver for Saturday testing, like, hope you get there, right? More of, hey, here's a waiver Saturday testing and here's the plan to get you to the school that you need to be at in order to test.
Well, thank you, Mr. Raymer. You make a very good case on why this is very beneficial, it sounds like, to all students. I think there's probably some questions the board will have, and I don't know if everybody's jotting down their questions. Ms. Jenkins, do you like to go first with questions, or do you want me to go to the other end of the table? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so first, I'm just going to ask some basic questions, just because we change things so much. I want to make sure I'm not saying things that are inaccurate here. So are we currently offering transportation to CTE programs for students who are not zoned for those schools?
We do not.
Okay, I don't think so, but I just want to make sure I don't say stuff that's not accurate anymore. And for the summer enrichment programs, did we offer transportation for that?
We didn't this past year, but in the previous years we did.
Okay. So my conversation and my questions about this, first and foremost, Mr. Raymer, please don't think I'm diminishing your investment in this. I appreciate what you're saying. I obviously acknowledge that this expands access to all of these programs, and the safety piece of it. I totally understand that, but I do, just so for the public who's listening, like this is the first time we're seeing this presentation, but it's not the first time it's brought up to us. We got calls from the superintendent about it, so I knew that this was kind of coming, and I had my concerns that I had shared with Dr. Rendell. So I have a bunch of questions. So one of the pieces that is difficult for me to be gung-ho about this is that I don't have data, or did we collect data on how often these would be utilized, even just like a fake snapshot of, if this was capitalized in a high school in 1 month, really which programs would be using this and how often? Like, how did we come up with the idea that we needed 2 per school? Because realistically, we don't want to do this and then have vans sitting around for the majority of the time when we could have had 1 per school. That's a significant cost of $1.9 million, right? So that's something that is hard for me to wrap my brain around. These aren't school buses, right? This is only transporting 9 kids at a time at maximum. So I really want to understand how often this is really going to be used. I understand all the ways it can be used. Really, how often are these going to be utilized? So that was something that I had asked to see before this presentation, and I'm still kind of questioning that because it's a huge investment. And the other piece of that too is we also want to ensure that when these are at schools that there's going to be a balance and an equity for all the programs that we mentioned, right? We had multiple slides listing of all the ways it could be utilized, but how are we going to ensure that it's going to be used equitably and it's not going to be only used by the soccer team or the football team or things of that nature? Because I think that that's important too, right? And then there's a conversation too, you had mentioned, for instance, a good example of some of our students who have access to dual enrollment through FIT who may not have transportation to go there to capitalize on that dual enrollment. Do we set a standard that things like that become a priority because of the academic significance for our students? So I think that those are conversations that have to definitely be had. The problem too is, what is the predicted maintenance cost on this? It's not just a $1.9 million investment. There's significant costs that come alongside of that going forward that we would have to maintain and commit to. Of course, obviously gas for the cars. Are we paying these employees that are offering to take this training and drive these students? What's the liability for those staff members too? Is there a conflict with our teachers' contract who aren't supposed to have students inside of their cars? Things of that nature. Does it limit the amount of staff members that can do it, or does the training override that? But I had expressed this to Dr. Rendell when we had this conversation on the phone. If we had all the money in the world, I'd be like, yeah, of course, this is wonderful. But I'm hesitant because, when I came on this board, it was after a lot of really important programs were taken away from the school system, and slowly some of them have been added back. An example being, our job positions of our media assistants. We were able to put those back in. And one of the things that you hear consistently over and over and over again is lack of access to academic programs, which I just truly believe is our number one priority as a school district, is ensuring our students have access to academic programs. And when we're in an environment where parents are screaming about school choice and parental choice for where they get to send their kids, it's hard to ignore the fact that when we have CTE programs all over this district, some students can't access programs because they're not zoned for those schools. And then they're relying on transportation from their families, and we don't have mass transportation that is effective in Brevard County. Students who have been fortunate enough to be lotteried into a choice school no longer have access to that because they may not have a family member who can drive them to that school every single day. And then now we just added another addition too with our year-round school, up in Titusville. I believe we're offering transportation this year, but that's not a thing we talked about going forward if that was going to continue for families who want to opt into that school as well. So for me, it's really difficult to sign off on almost $2 million and then knowing that there's going to be way more costs to maintain and to run this when we haven't even remotely considered re-implementing or partially re-implementing access to academic choice for our families. I think that should be a priority going forward before making a decision on this. And or, again, I think there needs to be more a deeper dive of data of utilization of these, not just this would be really great, my kids could use it. Again, it's $1.9 million, if not way more going forward. Do we need 2 vans at every single school? Do we need 1 at every single school? I think that's a really, really important before we make such a commitment going forward. Because what I'm fearful of is if we commit to this, the reality is we're never bringing back choice busing unless there's some magical, insane surplus coming into the school district. And I know that that is a priority for families. I mean, every single time I run into a parent, that's a significant concern. And that's a concern that affects the entire county. It's not just one school or one area. So it's hard for me to support this. Again, it's not diminishing the value of, what this could offer to kids. I totally understand that. But for me, a priority is that academic access. And I think we need to have a conversation about that.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
That's right.
Go ahead.
I think you brought up some great points, Ms. Jenkins. I think those are well taken, the who, what, when, where, why of the usage of these. I think when we're talking about the transportation between schools and stuff like that for choice programs, one of the things to note is that this is a non-reoccurring expense where the only reoccurring expense is going to be oil changes and stuff like that. I think the reoccurring expense that comes from a choice busing is between $1 and $1.5 million, depending on how you want it per year, which is a significant increase. I don't think anybody on this board disagrees with going to choice busing. I think the issue that we were inhibited by, which was one of the largest decision-making parts of that, was that we just didn't have enough bus drivers. And what ended up happening, that was one of the deciding factors, was, and I tried to fight it because I was in support of keeping it. The issue is that we just did not have enough bus drivers inside of our system. So I think when looking at this, I completely agree with your request to see all of how these things are used. As a teacher and a coach and a club sponsor of many of these, I can see these being used daily to the point where it's also a reduction in cost on transportation because some of your smaller sports programs are not going to be taking a bus in some of the instances because there's a requirement for a bus based on certain circumstances, whether it's outside the county and other things where we require them to do that. So it'll be a reduction on our workforce for our buses and reduction on cost in those aspects that'll probably offset the cost of the oil changes and stuff like that. But I did want to rest assured and let you know, I don't think that this is a one or the other. I think that they're apples and oranges. I think you're talking about a non-reoccurring expense versus a reoccurring expense, one that we all agree with on the reoccurring expense as far as bringing back choice busing. But I think the cost of it and some of the other factors are the part of the inhibitors. I just wanted to say that, and I did want to give you the rest assurance that these will be used multiple times, both by clubs and activities and sports teams and academics and everything else. I think it's great. Thank you.
Mr. Trent?
Again, being redundant here, if we treat these as activity buses, not school buses, bringing kids to school from home, the priorities will be set by the principals themselves of, what season it is, what clubs, teams have priority in these, and, sign-up sheets, all that. I don't think we'll have a problem being used. They're probably going to ask you why only two, but it's something that obviously, I agree with Ms. Jenkins and Mr. Susan about access to programs, but the obvious use of these, it is almost like I can't believe we haven't done it yet. I mean, for a cost of under $2 million, I believe that's one accident that we're being sued for, and we're probably going to look back and say that whatever it costs for these buses it doesn't cost at all. So I'm just happy we're taking a look at it now.
Well, Ms. Raymer, you made a great case for why these are obviously supported by a lot of our district staff. And I, like Ms. Jenkins, I have a couple questions, and they're more logistic questions, though, I think, just to kind of think through and process through. Main one being the prioritization of how they're utilized, that being a concern of like, hey, is this going to be just utilized for the favorite sport of that school? That is right. Like, that's what everyone's going to think. So we want to make sure that obviously it's utilized for more than just that. Can it be utilized for transportation for special needs children that have different circumstances or criteria as far as getting to or from school? Is that an area that we could possibly look at? Will this reduce bus transportation? I know a lot of the drivers, they rely on picking up extra bus routes when there's something special or fun going on. Will this reduce that and potentially harm one of our drivers' sources of income? So just things to kind of consider through and think when we're going through all this. Will the drivers need any kind of specialized training? Because I know right now, I don't assume they're going to need a CDL, but maybe they're going to have something special as far as training goes. And then what is the criteria for who is eligible to drive the bus? Are we making sure that we're heavily vetting those individuals? And it's, is this a district employee? Is this a coach? Is this somebody special that's going to utilize driving the van? I love this idea. So you have my support as moving forward on it. I think the back end of this needs to really be tight as far as how we're going to prioritize using them, and then honestly looking at this on an ongoing basis, because if it's not being utilized, then can we talk about, hey, maybe one of the middle schools could really use one of these? Can we maybe move the van from this school to that school if it's not being utilized? So those are all just things to really think through. I think, honestly, you made a case that's pretty hard to really say, oh, they're not going to be utilized or they're not going to be beneficial. So many people are in support of having them on site. I think it's a great idea. Just want to make sure the back end is okay so we don't have a whole bunch of fighting over vans. That's all.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer all the questions at one time, because I know Ms. Jenkins asked a few, and then we had the rest of the board speak. So the rationale for 2 was we thought that was the right number in order to ensure that we could capture as many types of activities, groups, et cetera. If you get over 2, it's almost like, okay, maybe a bus is needed, right? Because then you're talking about 20 plus students. If you have one van, then you're really talking about, somewhere between, it says 9, but we're talking about high school students. So, you're really limited in what you could actually capture. So that's how we came up with 2. All of the drivers, the expectation would be that they are the coach, club sponsor, or the person that is affiliated with the program, such as a registered volunteer, somebody that is registered as a coach, et cetera. It wouldn't be, hey, Miss So-and-so, can you drive the van today? It would be the person sponsoring the club or activity, the person coaching, perhaps a district administrator, or not just a school-based administrator, I should say, or somebody that is able to. They will have to go through a training with our BPS transportation team. So I believe it's a 40-hour training that they would have to go through in order to be cleared. They do not need a CDL because the size of the van and the number of persons being transported do not reach the capacity or regulation to have a CDL. When it comes to who would have priority, what does this look like, how would they be used? I did not ask anybody to say, hey, like, give me a calendar. It's a great, idea and thought of, how would you use this? When we talked on the call with all of the principals, we talked about either an assistant principal or athletic activities director housing like a Google document. School clubs, activities, et cetera, could request in order to reserve the van. And that first priority would go to school-based activities, academics, et cetera. So I broke it down more of a like 60-40, 70-30, where we're going to be focusing on over here and the academic side. This isn't, oh, great, now we can transport, the team to all of the games, that we can do this. Whenever I talked with principals, like, the world of opportunities just became like immense. And the ideas that I had were tripled by the ideas that they had with absenteeism and Saturday testing and making sure that students have equal access to some of our summer programs and are able to, get home after, the tutoring opportunity that's after school. Hopefully that answers some of the questions, but just that's why we picked 2 vans. Priority would go to the academic and assistance programs and school-based activities. For example, on Monday, I would pretty much assure you that everybody that participates with the academic team would be taking one of the vans up here with their 6 to 8 academic team members. On Tuesday, that would probably be another club or sport, and so on and so forth. So I apologize for not having, like a mock calendar of a week or a month, but all the ways that we could utilize them, multiple of those come up daily of how we could do that. We did put social workers at every school. So if those social workers took the transportation, it's a great way for them to get out in the community and get the students that are struggling, that are at risk, that are absenteeism, and working through that. School-based administrators doing the same thing. So there's really a really wide variety of options for schools to use, and we would be watching them. I already talked to Kevin Robinson, and I met. He's our district athletics and activities coordinator, and we talked about monitoring if this was to happen to ensure that schools are utilizing them and make sure that schools are utilizing them in the right capacity. So we've already started the conversations of what this would look like on the backside, but haven't finalized those conversations because we have to make sure that the front side happens before the back side can exist.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. I have one ask just based on something that you had just said. So I would love to see a calendar exist, obviously, that shows who's using it, but I would also like to see who was attempting to use it. So maybe like a waiting list, so to speak, for a date, so we can really see how it's getting used, or days that it's heavily utilized, or days that it's not used at all, and that might help this conversation if there is any issues moving forward. Sorry, I'll turn it over if anybody else has
Yeah, I have a
questions.
follow-up.
All right, go ahead.
So I got to clarify some things because it's we're making a really expensive decision and saying things that aren't really super accurate. This is not a non-reoccurring expense. This is absolutely a reoccurring expense. It's a vehicle. It's more than just oil changes and gas. I mean, it's just maintenance, period, just like any other vehicle. And again, then there's the replacement cost at some point too, to that commitment. So this is absolutely a reoccurring expense. So that's just inaccurate. And I understand that choice busing went away for many, many reasons, one of which the lack of bus drivers. Absolutely. That is a correct statement. But we're not in the same position that we were in, but also back then, we weren't legally allowed to use these vans in the first place, right? And so we did have giant school buses going out to pick up students way out of route or making the routes longer in order to get them to these choice programs. But now these vans are able to be utilized. So it is different. It's shorter routes. It's a completely different conversation. It's a much lower cost for choice busing than when we were using generic sized school buses. So my question is, have we even reassessed what the cost of academic choice busing would cost us nowadays with this as an option and an opportunity? And if we haven't, I think it's really irresponsible of us to move forward with this program without knowing that answer, because we could have an either or situation. And I think it's important for us to know what's on the table, because my gut feeling is that it might be close to the same cost. And if it is, we need to have a conversation about that. Which one do we think benefits the community more, or what are we prioritizing?
So I'd like to address that.
Yeah.
So the corridor busing is something we have considered. We'll do a deeper dive into that to show you how much that would cost if we were to reinstate what we had before. But you're going to be transporting a larger number of students, so you would need buses. You wouldn't be doing, these wouldn't be a solution for that. This is not the same. The corridor busing is every day, to and from school, large numbers of students, buses and drivers and that kind of thing. These are not additional drivers. This is not a solution for corridor busing.
Are we not paying these people who are driving these vans?
We haven't, considered that. Most of them are going to be people who get a supplement already. So if it's the coach for the team or the sponsor for the team or club or something like that, they're already getting a supplement.
Okay, so these are this is what I'm talking about though, because this is really important information that should be solidified before we give a thumbs up to move on a program. I've heard before, and I've heard it today, of it's a liability if a student gets into an accident. Well, the reality is that actually isn't a liability of the school district. We're not making that child drive the vehicle to that place. I mean, no one wants a kid to get into a car accident. I'm not saying that, but that isn't a liability for us. A liability for us is putting our staff members or volunteer in a van driving the kids around. That's our liability. So we're actually increasing our liability, not reducing it. And so, yes, of course, we have to pay for drivers for corridor busing and choice busing, absolutely. But we're not going to get away with not paying the people who are driving kids in a van and increasing the liability of the school district. That's a cost too. So I feel like there's too many question marks out there for numbers that we don't even have answers to talk about this. And I'm not comfortable with it's going to cost a lot more because we haven't even reassessed what it would cost for us to do choice busing. So how much someone in here know how much it cost us the last time we ran choice busing for our schools? And again, that's using full-size buses, long routes, paying overtime to bus drivers because we didn't have enough of them. Do we have that number?
I don't think anybody has it today right now, but we'll get that
Or
number.
guesstimate, obviously. I don't need it to be exact. But I think that's important because again, one of the things I remember time and time again, our assistant superintendents talking about when we had to get rid of that program, and there was a gentle conversation of potentially bringing it back, and we just couldn't, obviously COVID and everything, was the fact that we weren't allowed to use smaller vehicles because that actually would benefit that program. So again, I'm really uncomfortable with us making generic statements without data and facts. I think it's really irresponsible of us. And I think if the community, when this gets on a board agenda eventually, when the community hears about it, the people who want that choice busing back are going to be really, really upset that wasn't a conversation that we had before we made this decision.
Ms. Wright, if I may.
Go ahead.
I think there's when we cut the choice busing, it was $1 million, which was what the savings was, and it was significantly higher than that. And that was the operating. That did not include the purchase of new buses. That did not include a lot of the other costs that are in there. So the estimate was around $1.5 million to estimate the cost for that corridor busing. When you take a $1.5 million of a reoccurring expense over and over again, and you say, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this in 4 years, say for instance, that's going to get up to $6 million. When you're talking about 39 automotive vans, which if you buy a new set of tires for them every year, do new oil for them, you're talking about $2,500 in cost each. It's a significantly different cost. The reoccurring costs for that, I was thinking the other day when I was talking to one of the communications people, is that you can wrap these vans for the cost that would offset for the reoccurring cost of the vans, oil, tires, everything else. But I don't think it's fair to say that if we did this, we could do the other one, because you're talking about a purchase of 1.9. Within the first year of the reoccurring budget on the other side, it's going to cost about that, because that's what we reduced it to. It'll be close to $2 million of a reoccurring cost for the buses to do the transit for the choice busing. Then you have that every single year, and that's a deeper dive conversation to say that this piece right here could pay for that is not fair. It's not the same. It's apples and oranges. Now, could you say that there's a little bit of money could be used for maybe 1 year? Possibly. But when you go to commit to that, you have to have a 10-year plan. And I don't see the funding or the resources for that now. I think Dr. Rendell said he's going to look at that. But I think to say that we're going to purchase 39 automotive vans, and instead of doing that, we should be doing choice busing ahead of that, I don't think that's a correct statement to look at. And I wanted to say one other thing. When we talk about the liability and transport of the individuals, I almost lost a student at O'Galley High School because he was riding with a friend back from a basketball game, got into a car accident, and for 11 months was inside the hospital. And I'll never forget that night. I'll never forget the night when the student was driving another student. And I'll never forget that night. And that's the reason when I talk about the liability, I didn't want to bring it up. But those are the things that go on inside of our schools right now, is that they drive home with people that may not be as credible as a person that goes through a 40-hour course, or somebody that goes through and has certifications or works for the school district. And it puts our kids in a liability. Whether we get sued or not, it's not good practice. So thank you.
I just
Sorry, go ahead.
want to jump in. In the proposal, the school staff will complete the necessary training. The drivers will be people that are already getting paid. They'll be your sponsors, they'll be your coaches, they'll be your people involved within that activity. There'll be somebody, obviously, we'll have to bridge the gap a little bit with some after-school tutoring, potentially of where that is, but we've been able to bridge that with some funding sources and things of that nature. So a lot of times it would be, specific school-based personnel, majority of which would already be receiving a supplement or some sort of secondary income for sponsoring or being a part of that program.
Yeah, hopefully they would have this. I mean, that's going to be and it is part of their activity. I mean, these are activity buses. So, and again, it sounds like two different conversations going on. There's no way you could run these every day as a school bus. Then you would be replacing them often. I've seen this in action. The athletic director, controls the calendar. You talked about a calendar, but at the beginning of the year, it's very simple. All activities, get your schedules in. If you need a bus for an away game, get it to me quickly. The time gets filled up. They're going to be fighting over too. Trust me. There's boys and girls sports. There's different activities going on. There's only so many times they're going to need these throughout the year, but it's crucial. I mean, if you're going to an activity at the north end of the county, you're going to really want to have a bus or a van, and instead of saying, "Hey, kids, just find your way there." So again, these will be used. Of course, it has to be. Google Docs are great, but I believe. They're looking for something like this. The athletic directors, activity directors, they're going to be handling this, professionally, and these sponsors, they're going to want to get their dates in quickly. It'll be in the summer, probably even, before the end of the school year, the previous school year, of knowing their schedules, their events, on when they're going to want to reserve a bus or a van. In action, this will be a wonderful thing for the schools. It is 2024. This is something that I just can't believe it's taken this long for us to realize the need for this.
You all done?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Trent. Okay. Again, I think I am in support of this. I think it's very hard for us to say this is not a good idea when so many wonderful ideas are coming around how we can support students that maybe wouldn't have access to some of the summer enrichment camps, the Saturday testing, the tutoring. There's just a lot of opportunity there. And when our staff is jumping up and down saying, yes, please do this, this will help us at our school site, I think we have to be responsive to that. Ms. Jenkins, I hear what you're saying as far as the choice goes. I think the other part to consider is when the choice busing was eliminated, it wasn't the same climate for choice school as it is right now. And so those choice vouchers weren't open up universally to everyone without income limits. Am I wrong?
No, yeah, so let me clarify. That word it has two meanings and it's used differently, but that's not what I'm talking about. Sort of, the answer to what you just asked me is yes, sort of, it actually already did exist, but that's not what I meant. Brevard County has always been a choice school district. Parents always had a right to choose a school. But also we have choice schools, right? West
Right.
Melbourne School of Science, Challenger 7, Freedom 7, West Shore, yada, yada, yada. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay,
I'm
all
not
right,
talking
sorry.
about,
I thought you
I'm
were
not talking
meaning
about
as far as,
busing
like,
kids
parents' choice on moving
to private
to
schools.
a-
No, no,
okay,
no, no.
All right, so I apologize. for
No, no, that's
misunderstanding.
okay. It's the same word, but it's, oh, I hate that they use the same word, but
Okay,
that's
all right, well, that's my misunderstanding, so I hear the concern there, and I think these are two separate conversations, so, as far as moving forward on this, you have my support. I think this is a good idea, I think this serves our students very well, I think it'll serve our schools very well, and ultimately, as a parent who has children in sports, who is frequently having to transport multiple children because families can't get them to a different venue, that I can see the benefit of this, honestly, wholeheartedly I can. So I believe at this point, you have three of us that's on, like they said, move forward. Is that fair to say? Ms. Campbell's not here, obviously. Ms. Jenkins, you're not in favor of this right now, it sounds like?
No, I'm not. And I want to acknowledge, I want to acknowledge something Mr. Susan said. Like, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Susan, you're accurate. I get it. Like, I get what you're talking about. That's a commitment going forward if we did choice busing. I'm not saying that it isn't. What I am saying, though, is we only have so much money, right? And this is a millage initiative that voters voted for. So I think it's important for us to consider all of the options for the community that voted for it. That's really what I'm saying. Yes, we would be making a commitment going forward to finding those funds year after year if we did choice busing. Totally understand that. But I'm just really uncomfortable that we haven't reassessed how much it would cost us, because it would be significantly less money now that these are an option. I just think that has to be done. I think it needs to be done, especially when we're utilizing millage funds. Yeah, year after year, we're going to have to pay for it. I totally understand that. But it's a huge chunk of money to put towards something without knowing the other side.
Can I ask real quick? Ms. Jenkins, are you saying that we would use the buses or the vans for the transportation? What was that last piece that you just said?
That was legitimately a conversation before it was legal for us to even do it, because a lot of the routes that were picking up students for choice were not being utilized to their full capacity. They didn't need a giant school bus for those routes. And so the conversation from our assistant superintendents was, we wish we could have little tiny vans, but we're not legally allowed to do that. So that's what I'm talking about, is like, we don't even know what that looks like and what that would cost to run a program like that. It would obviously be cheaper than a school bus, but we don't know because we never had that option back when we had choice busing. It wasn't allowed.
So just as a point of clarification, I significantly remember when we were transporting kids, a lot of them were utilized for like the Edgewood and West Shore choice programs and stuff like that. It would be very difficult to purchase these, use these at a school and transport them around. But I just think that what Ms. Jenkins is trying to get at is there's some definite positive to us looking at going back to choice busing. I don't think anybody here disagrees with making that evaluation every year, because one of the problems we have is we're 72 miles long. We have great programs in certain places, but kids don't have access to it. One of the things that we did notice when we were doing the choice busing was that the majority of kids that were transferring to some of those choice programs, not the Edgewood and West Shores, but the down tickets like the aviation program at O'Galley and stuff like that, they were actually staying local. There wasn't much that were kids from like Astronaut were transporting down there. So I think that's a good request, Ms. Jenkins. I think that's something that we all agree with taking a look at and moving forward with an idea of possibly doing it. I just don't think that we should stall this to try to say that you should look at that, because the significant increase for programs and everything else here being the fact that those other issues that are bus drivers and other pieces that we have to put into that puzzle are going to be needed as part of that conversation. And I don't think we're right there yet, but I think we're close. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I appreciate those aspects, but I just wanted some clarification there, that's all. Thank you.
And I want to clarify, I'm not trying to make it a perception that this board doesn't care about choice busing. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is, even if we consider it after committing $2 million to this program, that money is just not going to exist. This is free. This is not free money, but this is money that we don't have strings attached to, where we get to make the choice to utilize. And to me, it's important for us to know how much it costs.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Thank you, Mr. Susan. It sounds like you had great conversation here. I'm excited for the potential in this. I'm going to ask if we can just take a 5-minute recess before we go into all these wonderful policies, if that is okay. Dr. Rendell, do you have anything you want to add to this conversation beforehand?
Well, two things I'm taking away from the conversation this morning. Number one is the board is interested in getting a true picture of what restoring corridor busting would look like and how much it would cost. So we will do that. We'll prepare that for the board. While also getting direction that we should move forward with this project as it stands. So
Yes.
we're going to do both things.
I think
And
that's,
as soon as we can get an accurate picture of what restoring corridor busing would look like and how much it would cost, we'll present that to the board.
thank you, Dr. Rendell. So if we can take a 5-minute recess and then come back at 10:50, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Nice.
I have to go to the bathroom so bad that I'm All right, welcome back. The second topic that we have today is to review the remaining policy revision recommendations from the 2023-2024 and board review of the Neola updates, volume 25, number 1, legislation updates. So, board, you should have received
Yep.
in the agenda packet 253 pages of policy review, in addition to a wonderful cover sheet that goes over all of the policy revisions.
And
have
our
it?
own little,
right,
overview
good.
and everything else.
Good, all right. So Ms. Campbell sent in hers, correct?
Yes, I have her thing she made comments on. 3 of them, I'm going to pull one.
Which policies are you going to pull?
Yeah, which ones? 'Cause
Just
I-
the 154. We went back and checked, and it looks like we rescinded 0154
Okay.
in August of 23.
All right, that's one circle.
When we rescinded that one, there was a note on there to, I think, incorporate it into 151, and we did 154.1. So I think we just need to move those over and amend 151 instead.
Okay, wonderful. What is the next one that you're pulling?
I'm not pulling any others of hers. She just had comments on them. So there's 2 other policies that she had comments on. So when
Okay,
we get
sorry.
to them, I'll just read in what her comments were.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I thought you were pulling them.
Nope.
All right, do you have any that you're pulling off for any reason?
Nothing else.
Nope, okay. All right, so let's start going through them. I know it's been a while since we've had the fun policy review. So we'll start going through. Does anybody have anything that they want to add, discuss, or possibly consider changing in policy 0131?
And that was just mainly a Neola update.
Nope, okay. All right, how about next policy, 0147.1? Travel and expenses.
Miss Wright, you might be able to just ask everybody what ones they wish to change. You might be
You
able
don't
to
wanna
just
go down
skip
each
all-
line?
You can
Okay.
if you want. Listen,
Okay.
I'm here. I don't have any questions until 2260.
Until, I'm sorry, which one?
2260, which is the next page.
2260,
But if
okay.
somebody else, you know what I mean? I don't know if Miss Jenkins or somebody's got any.
All right,
other
how about
questions.
this? Does anybody have any questions, concerns, or recommendations for anything on the first page of our, yeah, I'm like, I know, it's a lot, so.
131 to
How are we gonna go through it? All right.
215, yep.
I had one, and this is more of a administrative procedure, asking for that to be updated in 0169.1 to lay out. We added a new section of this. This is the public comment policy in regards to individuals that have been trespassed. So I'm just asking for an administrative procedure to please be listed on the website that coincides with that policy. That was the only one I had on that page. Jean, are you good on that page if you have anything? Okay. We need to add one.
Understood.
All right. Next page, Mr. Susan, you indicated 2260 is one that you had.
Yeah, so in 2260 subsection 11, it says the requirements of the informal resolution process, including the circumstances under which it precludes the parties from resuming a formal complaint arising from the same allegations. Okay. So it's just like mumbo jumbo about the processes of the complaint. But one of the things I just wanted to make sure with Mr. Gibbs, and maybe it's a follow-up question, is that one of the things we dealt with in the discipline issues that we had in the past was that when a Title IX investigation was implemented at the same time as a discipline meeting, it almost put that discipline could not move forward at the same time, and we would have to complete the Title IX prior to the discipline.
That's correct.
And so that's not the current policy, is it?
Yes. If a student's being investigated for Title IX under the 2020 regs, or the changes in 2020, they cannot be disciplined till the Title IX investigation is completed.
And if if the Title IX investigation is not able to move forward for whatever reason, do we then move forward with the discipline?
If it's a Title IX, then there's no reason why the investigation wouldn't go forward.
So here's an instance, okay? There's a fight between 2 males, and one of the males hits the other male in the genitalia. It triggers a Title IX investigation for that. This is a case that actually happened in the past. The Title IX investigation was not able to move forward because of one thing or another. The kid that punched the other kid was not able to move forward with the actual discipline. Can you kind of walk me through how that would happen? There's a physical fight between two people. Title IX's brought up. You see what I
I don't know
mean?
what they were told at the
Yeah.
time, so yeah, I would have to get into the facts more.
Okay, what if, go ahead.
I know we cleaned up a lot of the procedures last year.
Yeah.
And we put specific procedures in place. We put protective measures, like when there is an issue, we separate the kids, put those protective measures in place. And we've speeded up the process where before it was taking
Right.
a long time. So we've reduced the time by actually putting more efficient procedures in place.
Okay. So this is something that I can meet with Ms. Dampier after, and if it's an issue that arises, then I can bring it back. There's some more specific ones that I'd like to bring to you so that you could look at them and rest assured
Is
that
it
they're not.
current?
No, they're from the past.
Okay.
But I just need to make sure that these aren't going to
Okay.
happen again, that's all.
Absolutely.
And it's not worth talking about it here.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah, and just, Mr. Susan, just so you know too, like, there was a solid 2 years where this district had, even if we had procedures in place, they weren't really able to be followed super well because we didn't have like a staff member for it, and then it was given to someone else, and then it moved to another person, and it was a disaster. So just, it's probably going to be the answer, unfortunately. But
Ms. Dampier,
by the
you've
way,
done a-
Ms. Dampier, thank you for making that a
Yes.
priority when you got here.
Yes, thank you.
Yep,
All right.
thank you.
Anybody else have anything else on this page? Nope, okay. Moving on to the next page. All right. Does anybody have
Nope.
anything on this page? I wrote something, but. Oh, I have, okay, so on page 53 of the policies, I think this is a technical error. Hold on, I think it's 53. Let me make sure. Number 9, yes, okay. Number 9, that first paragraph, so it looks like we're changing it to, sorry, it's page 53, policy number 2421. In my packet online here, it would be under section 9. I don't know if you're looking at the attachment. So we changed it to 150 hours. And it looks like the very last sentence says 135-hour threshold. I think that's a technical error. It should say 150 hours. They don't match. Is that correct? If you're looking at the first page, or it's just a technical error. So we didn't change the 135 at the bottom to match the 150 that we changed it to. So. Okay, does anybody else have anything else on this page? Don't all jump at once, okay. All right, next page, which just covers 3 policies, and I have notes made, so let me see what I,
Ms. Campbell has 2522.
I have 2522 too as well, so, let's see, hang on. Oh, okay, so page 83, hang on, let me go to the page. I think I had something that was just more of a question of consistency because of changing the word shall to may, which we did in another policy when it came to recouping cost associated with some of the curriculum. We didn't change it on F1, we kept it, I think we should change it from shall to may. So we're consistent because for the fees charged, hang on, sorry, I'm trying to find where it's on here. F1 is what I wrote down. Okay, F1 for the replacement and purchase of instructional materials by students. On policy 2520, we changed that verbiage from shall to may, and we kept it shall here. So I'm like, I think just we're going to collect it or we're not going to collect it. So maybe not, we're going to collect it this time, but we're not going to collect it that time. So for consistency purposes, I think on this policy, we should change it to may, and that will make us consistent throughout what our policies are. If that makes sense. That makes sense? Okay.
Yep.
All right. What did Ms. Campbell write in regards to 2522?
On section A7, she says, it says the committee shall be established at the beginning of each school year. And she was asking whether we should put something in to clarify when a new board member comes in, such as this November, to add for them to select their committee members, because it's not in there right now.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. I had in here, this is a really funky one because we put the procedure in the policy and we don't have procedure written in policy anywhere. So my recommendation would be to remove the procedure, seeing as how this is such a fluid process right now and it's changing all the time with legislation and board members and all of that, that my recommendation would be to remove the procedure out of the policy and put the procedure in the procedure category.
So I have a question. We've gone over this policy so many times, so I really don't remember. For our board appointees, is it listed somewhere else where they serve like a year term, or did we have that listed somewhere? Like, I know some of them, like when I came on, I don't even want to say which committee because I'm going to get it wrong. But one of them was like, this person serves this term. It was a term limit, basically.
Some charters, like I want to say ICOC and ICCMO, may have terms in their charter document that the board approved because those
Okay.
committees recommended their replacements, not board member representation. Like the audit committee has board member representation, the review committee has board member representatives.
Okay.
So those,
I'm not opposed to it. I just,
Right.
because there's supposed to be appointments of the board members, but I just want to make sure that doesn't exist somewhere else.
I'm looking just to make sure, but I don't see it anywhere else.
It's usually been a standing thing that if somebody new comes in, that they reset all of their appointees.
It's probably worth the board taking the initiative of making a appointee policy for anybody that any board member appoints. We need to make sure they're consistent with who's in office at that time, because if you have a new person, they're probably going to want to appoint their own people to different committees, which is fair.
And that's what I was getting at. I guess really for new board member orientation, that'd be really helpful. Because there's a couple that you can't because they literally do have a term limit. I mean, for this one, I feel like it's obvious it should be a board when the board flips, but just curious if it's written anywhere.
It's always been standing policy that whoever comes in reestablishes who they want. And if charters like,
Unwritten policy.
Right,
It's
the
been
charters.
standard Unwritten policy.
the charters, but, right.
So, Mr. Gibbs, would that be something that you would like to take the initiative on writing a policy for appointees?
yeah, I can
Of
do
board
some
members?
board member appointee.
Yes. Okay. And board, are you comfortable with us removing the procedure out of the policy? I don't want to flip that and say backwards. Okay.
Yep.
Can I just interject, because 2522 is new for us. It was in Neola last year. And basically, we made we didn't change the content, but we put it within the policy because now we'd have 3 policies. One is about the instructional materials program. And then the second one includes the adoption and selection process with the hearings and all that go. And then now 2522, that speaks specifically to the objection process. Are we okay with adopting 2522 as a policy that speaks? Because before, in our policies, whether it was instructional materials policy or the selection and adoption, we had the objection process language kind of all in both of those policies. So with the addition of 2522 being a policy specific to the objection process, are we okay with bringing on 2522? To me, for all of our stakeholders, it makes it clear. This is how we adopt, and this is the process for selection and how we appeal during the adoption process. That's a separate process than the objection process for adopted materials. They're 2 separate processes that we go through.
Sounds good.
Are we legally required to have the procedure in there too? I feel like that was a conversation in the legislature.
With the procedures, it's about having clarity. I believe I'll defer to you, but
Yeah.
our procedures also are very different than Neola just as a whole. And so if we can put them in as procedures, we're happy to take them out of policy.
Right, we have to have procedures delineated. I'd have to double check the exact language to see if it says in policy or not, or if it just says the board must have a procedure available to the public. I want to lean toward, I believe it says procedure available to the public and posted on our homepage and all that.
And as you're reviewing these three, I just want to, September 2024, the state updated the objection form. So everywhere in the policies where you see 2520,
Yeah.
F2, that's going to be replaced with a new form that's going to be called 2522 F1.
Okay,
And basically, the changes in form include that if I am just a resident of the county and I'm making an objection, I can only do one per month.
right, yeah, there's a limitation. Okay. I mean, the only reason my recommendation was to remove the procedure was it just doesn't seem consistent with what we do for everything else, since we have procedure and a policy manual that's attached online. And this changes so much, unfortunately, something, and every time you want to make a change, we're going to have to go back to policy making, and that's a whole process that takes a long time versus changing a procedure is a far simpler process. So board, what's your appetite for that? Are you okay with that? As long as we're legally in compliance,
Yep.
you'll
Yeah,
check that?
I'll double check, and if we can pull them out. If we can't, I'll let
Okay,
staff know. But if you want to pull them out, if we're allowed to, that would be the board's call.
all right, well, that would be what my ask would be. Anybody?
Yeah, I'm not, as long as we make sure, because I feel like that was something wacky that came up, and as long as it's clearly very easily accessible on the website
Right.
for everyone, no going through 55,000 links to find it, I'm okay with it. I agree. It's going to change, and it's not just going to change based on the board member switching. It's going to change every single year the legislature meets, and it's going to be really frustrating to update that constantly, so.
Okay. Mr. Souza, Mr. Trent, are you
I'm
comfortable?
good, yep.
Okay. All right, anybody else have anything else on this page? No? All right, next page. Does anyone have anything on this page? I had something and I just want to look at it real fast before I say it out loud. Make sure that it's the same policy that I think that it is. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. It always takes a minute to get there because there's just so many wonderful pages here. All right. Okay, this one, I asked Mr. Gibbs this, and I think he clarified it, but on policy 5114, we're adding the fact that our students with J1 visas and F1 visas may not graduate from high school or receive a diploma. And his explanation was that that coincides with our student progression plan. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And I can tell you, we've done quite a bit of research around this, and that is, in all districts, that is the case.
Okay, all right. It just made me go, why, when I saw that, and I couldn't find it in the student progression plan. I was trying to find it this morning, but didn't have enough time to really devote to it. So thank you for the clarification. All right, does anybody else have anything else on that page? No. All right, moving on to the next page. Does anybody have?
3121? Is 3121 on this list?
Oh, what, sorry, no, we're, 3121, we just passed. That was the previous page. So
Yeah.
that's criminal background.
I apologize. Criminal background and employment history checks. The one thing I was going to ask is that there seems to be a series of people who they come and they say, hey, I had this thing flagged. I think we're working on one right now. And there's not like a clear area for them to say, hey, I'm having an issue, or to let us know. It just seems like something that keeps coming up. And then they say, well, I would like to appeal it, but I don't know where to appeal it and stuff like that. Can you give some guidance to that?
So that's exactly what this change is, right? There's no appeal process at all.
Right.
And I can't violate board policy, so when they say they don't disclose something, whether it's a bad check from 25 years ago, they didn't disclose it, and I'm required to follow board policy and say, sorry, you're not eligible to work for us now. With this change, it'll allow us to have an appeal process where, it's to me, right? I'll look at it and say, is it a disqualifier? Go through the things. If it makes sense that we take a second look, we'll take a second look.
Okay. One of the things it does is it mentions in there that the superintendent would be notified.
Or designee.
Or designee. Is there a way to notify the board chairs of that? Or do you guys care to do that? No? Okay. All right.
No.
That's all.
I don't, I think we could be in the weeds on that one.
All right.
Yeah.
Just a question, just a question. As
it's
long
an
as there's a
operational
process that
function.
they're going through.
Correct.
I think the problem we've had in the past is that they're like, where's the process? Because I know we've spoken about this and we wanted to be able to give them an opportunity to file some sort of an appeal, but it may not have ever gotten into the policy, so that may be the issue.
That's exactly what
And I
this is.
think that that's why these things are bubbling up right now, that I'm
Right.
dealing with a couple of them, so thank you.
Well, and Mr. Susan, I'm sure you're like all of us, we all get reached out to by somebody who maybe has been disqualified and didn't have the opportunity to appeal, and I can understand why you're like, well, do we want to have that there? But I think we should this should be your job, Mr. Dufresne, so we would love for you to have that appeal.
Roger
Yep,
that.
just making sure thank you, sir.
All right, wonderful. All right, on to the next page. Page down, okay. Any questions, concerns, recommendations for this page? No? All right. On to the next page. On 5505, I think we had a lettering faux pas. This is more of just a technical error. Academic honesty, which is a new policy that I am very much in favor of. But the numbers I think it's letters actually is what I wrote in here. The lettering was off. They got a little out of whack.
Yeah, they go AX, ALL.
Yeah, and I'm like, why did we stop at H instead of going? So that's just a technical, nothing major. All right. And nobody else has anything on this one? Nope. All right. Next page. Does anybody have anything on this one? Hearing none. All right. Next page. This is all financial services. Does anybody have anything on this one? I just wanted to highlight one that I think it's very good and I'm excited about it, and that's 6114. I love that we're being held accountable to market prices rather than gouged prices for government, which sometimes seems to happen. So I'm very happy with this policy. We must act with prudence when it comes to government dollars. I think
Yep.
that's always a good thing. All right. Does anybody have anything else on that page? No? All right. Going to the next page.
Are you on?
We're on starting with 6152.
Yep, got it. Okay.
All right. Guys, we're doing so much better than I thought. I thought we were going to be. All right, nothing on this page? Nope. Not on that page either?
On the
All
next
right.
page, 7440.
7440, which is the small
Yeah.
unmanned aircrafts.
It's related, and I like it because it gives us control over all of our, it adds a little bit here and there. But one of the things that inside of it that it doesn't recognize is students using them. It just says they're not to be used. And I just wanted to make sure that we were okay to have our student clubs doing stuff and everything else. That's all.
This was one of those ones that was really funky because they changed the legislation
Right.
on making sure that they are not anything with, I think it was Chinese
Right.
owned or something like that, right? They
Right.
couldn't- So, and it ended up killing a lot of those clubs because
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately the ones that are made in America were so much more expensive that it wasn't feasible for them to use them.
It just talks that an operator should have to have the license, right? And a lot of our students, if they are flying those race drones and stuff like that, are under the size, and the size isn't signified inside there. So basically, it's basically requiring anybody that flies a drone inside of our schools to have this. You have to be a licensed FAA, pilot. And what I just wanted to make sure is that our clubs and our activities and stuff like that can continue to do that, and they're not required. That's all. It's just one of those cleanups. If we need to add something to it. Paul, can you check just to make sure that we're okay?
It authorizes anyone authorized by the superintendent to operate on our school grounds, so that would include our staff that are authorized.
I know.
But we did have an incident at a school, and where this might come in, where somebody was flying one over one of our elementary schools, and nobody knew who it was, and it was getting down like
Yeah,
height level, so we wanted to make clear that no one else.
yeah, we have,
What's the process for that? Like if that were
You
to happen?
notify
what do you do?
SRO and have the SRO try and find who's flying it, because
Shoot it
they're
out
not
of the
allowed
sky.
to be on our school.
they have those nets that you can shoot
Yeah,
animals
where's
with.
your slingshot when you need it, right? Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, they have a lot of football and sporting events where people just try to come bring their drones, and I like when we shut them down. So,
Yeah, and they're not supposed to be doing that
Yep.
either. So.
No, I mean, it's a liability. If you don't know how to drive one of those drones and you drop it on somebody's head,
Yep.
Yeah.
and
Or
it's
their
going to
car,
hurt.
yeah, it causes significant property damage.
yep. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have anything else on this page? Huh. All right, on to the next page, starting with 8405. All things school safety, I see our, no, you're good. I don't have any questions, Rashad. You're coming up here, you're ready to go. I don't have anything written here, so I'm good. Anybody else have anything on this page? No. All right. Next page, starting with 8420.
Miss Campbell has 9,800.
Which one of these?
9,800. Miss
9,800,
Campbell
sorry.
made her last comment.
Okay.
Her
What does Miss Campbell have
Her
written?
comment was, in the event that an existing charter school contract provision is found to be inconsistent with this policy, the charter contract provision prevails. Is this referring to the school safety requirements section? It's showing as XLVI point D, or is it saying in general the whole policy? And how does that work when things in the policy reflect current Florida law? How does the charter contract trump the policy in that case?
Thank you. This is a long one, so. Oh, okay. In the event of a decision. School safety requirements, right, because it's under that subsection? Is that correct, Mr. Good?
Yeah, I would say it's supposed to be on school safety requirements, but
Right.
I mean, and if it is inconsistent with statute always prevails over contract language, so they have to follow the law just like we do.
Okay.
And I know with our current, even saying this, we work very closely with district security, with our charters, to ensure that they're in compliance with all of the safety.
Yes. All right. Now, the rest of these are grayed out because they are no changes or we are not adopting them. Does anybody have anything that they're concerned about with the,
Yeah, no, those we're marking those as reviewed on, but
Right.
they didn't come to the board, so these are all the ones that no changes were recommended by staff, and you guys had referred to staff.
okay,
So they came back with fine as is, so unless you guys have an issue you want to raise now, those are just going to be marked reviewed on.
good deal. Wow, I am honestly impressed. I thought we were going to be here. I was going to tell you guys before we started, I have a time certain stop of 3 p.m. today, but we're doing well. I thought we were going to be, all right. So, any other discussion or concerns or anything about the policies that we just went over? All 253 pages, all right. So the last topic is the Neola template, policy 6490, legal services for employees, officers, and public officials. Let me pull it up real fast.
Yeah, and this was directed to me by the board when we went through all of them. And there's some options on there that I can't really make selections for.
Okay,
I made selections for the ones that I thought I could answer for the board based on its direction, but the board's going to need to direct on some of those.
all right, so. Who wants to weigh in first on this one?
You mean, okay, you made the option choices of 1 and 2
Yeah, at the top where
Which
you
one
where
are you asking for us for direction
I
for?
believe it starts on page 2 where it says option 1. That's as far as I could go, and these are like, I didn't know which options the board wanted to select here, because you can designate to the superintendent or on some of these, so I don't know where you want to go with it.
Okay. All right, board, so what is the board's desires? And they want to jump out there with which one they want to go with?
And in particularly at the bottom of page 2 where there's monetary amounts that are needed to be filled in.
Have you looked, Mr. Gibbs, and to any other surrounding districts on what they have as far as a policy that's similar to this, what surrounding
Since,
counties are doing?
I have not seen if they have I'm assuming Neola districts either adopted Neolas or not, but I can reach out and try and fill it in. This is not on the advertised schedule yet, so it'll have to come back anyways.
Okay.
So if you want to see what other districts are doing,
I feel like I would like some more information to be able to just see what's consistent for
Right.
practice, so to speak.
So I have an opinion here because just before going in the weeds of it all, like the main difference between option 1 and option 2 is requesting reimbursement of your fees versus asking for them to be paid. My personal feeling, because all of this is when it's in your official capacity, all of them say that option. My opinion is option 1 it should be the choice. Because if you're going to get sued as an elected official in these tumultuous times for things that eventually are deemed not to be your fault, you have to put that upcoming expense up. And if it's in your official capacity, I think that's ridiculous of a burden to put on somebody, an elected official. It's not like that in any other elected office. That would never happen. And it's not a guarantee with option 1, but it is may.
I think where this gets a little hairy, oh, sorry, are you done? You done?
Well, because the one part that's like, the one part that's confused would be weird is like, if you go with option 2 and you're expecting a regular person in elected office to pay attorney fees up front to defend themselves of serving in their official role, and then it says may, at the end, the school board, for whatever reason, says, nope, we're not reimbursing those. Technically, then that person then can sue the school district, no? To say this was my official capacity.
correct.
Yeah, so I feel like that is a legal litigation disaster waiting to happen. Because isn't there a state statute that protects the elected official?
there's in their official capacity.
Right, in their official
So if
capacity. Yeah, I'm only talking official.
There are provisions that say they can be reimbursed, and that's where they would sue the district, say, hey, I defended it, it was in my official capacity, and I prevailed, so pay me
Right.
what my attorney's fees are.
Mr.
Okay.
Gibbs, I think it would be good if you came back with some more information on what the other surrounding counties are offering. This gets very hairy as to what is considered official capacity and all that fun stuff. So
Right.
I think it would be good and beneficial to have a little more information before we move forward on this one.
So I have a question too, because, and you're gonna have to clarify this so when you come back, but my understanding is that official capacity would be determined by the court.
Yes.
Most likely it would
Right,
be in there.
right?
Yeah.
So, well,
Right.
that's a safeguard is what I'm saying. It's not determined above the people
Right, right,
here to say,
right.
But yeah.
that's my official capacity. It doesn't matter.
No,
The
I
court
know.
has to determine that. Okay.
It'd most likely be a threshold question in the litigation. If they were sued in their official capacity and it was something in your personal capacity, we'd most likely move to dismiss the district and everything.
Right.
So here's the other thing that you need to consider as well. It's just inappropriate, in my opinion. I mean, I know you're going to come back, but it's inappropriate to not do it because there's the reality. There's people whose names were mentioned on litigation who aren't even on the board anymore for things when they were on the board. And that's insane. So you yourself will be taking liability for the rest of your life because you served on this board. It's just crazy. You're serving in a public capacity. And then again, I would like to know about the state statutes too, that protect elected officials in that, because
I think
it's
this
not
is
in here.
Definitely an interesting conversation. It's one that I would like more information on, and I think we should bring this one back with, when you can give us a little bit more on what is out there, Mr. Gibbs.
All right.
All right. Does any other board member have anything further to discuss? I had one thing, Mr. Gibbs, I mentioned this to you because it was mentioned to me that we don't have, your evaluation is not currently online, and that there's a holdup of some sort. Can you?
Yep. Yeah, Mr. Susan had said he was reviewing his evaluation piece and asked me not to sign it yet, so.
Mr. Susan, are we comfortable with going ahead and having the sign it so it can be published and put online? It needs to be, the evaluation is done, so I don't know. At this point, I would assume it has to be published.
Mr. Susan is free to ask the board to reconvene if he wishes to, but
Okay. All right. Well, I don't really feel like we have clarification on this. So is it going online then? Is that what you're, I mean, you want to have a look at it? I'm just trying to understand what.
Talked to Paul about looking at the evaluation, and I hadn't had a chance because we had talked before about how some of those that were on there would have been able to possibly be changed based on some of the stuff that we were talking about inside there. And I talked to Paul the other day, and I said, hey, I don't think that this changes anything from what your evaluation would be or anything like that. That's all.
But is it
So
holding up his evaluation completion though? That's the concern.
I don't
Like, if
know
it's-
if I can take a look and get back at the next board meeting for you. That'd be great.
If you could, yeah, just have it resolved by the next board meeting. I think it needs to be published and put out there for the public. At this
Oh,
point, so.
okay. I see what you're saying.
I have a question about that. So yours is published publicly.
It's not, right? Currently, it's not.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I mean, it can be. But that's the one that was individuals were going posted to. I think that's what we determined. The reason I'm asking is because if Mr. Susan's only looking at it as individual and it's not getting posted anyway, then it should.
No, I was going to say the group one should be the one that's published. That's what we did for Dr. Rendell. That would be consistent. The
We
boards-
discussed in the room that the individual was getting posted. That's why I'm asking. So if we're not doing that, then it shouldn't delay it any. If we're not going to do that anymore, then it shouldn't delay
No,
it.
I did not think that was not my understanding, that the individuals were being posted. I thought the group one was the only one being posted. The individual ones are available if somebody were to public records request and they could get them, but we're only going to post the board's evaluation of the attorney, not
I promise you that was our
individuals.
determination because it was different than what we discussed with Dr. Rennell, because Dr. Rennell's contract clearly states it's only the total.
Well, do you
So
have, I don't recall that because I thought we were keeping it
that was a
consistent, so-
decision that we made. But my point is, if we unmake that decision, then it doesn't delay posting it if Mr. Susan's individual isn't going to be posted anyway.
I didn't think the individual ones were being posted, so that's.
let me take a look at it.
So,
I didn't
let me
know
go
what
back
you're
and look at my
talking
notes
about.
too as well, but yeah, by next board meeting, let's get it
Yep.
resolved so we can
Sure,
make
I
sure that
agree.
it's transparent and out there.
Yep.
Okay. All right, perfect. Dr. Rendell, do you have any other further business?
We have a board work session on the schedule for November 12th. That's the week after the election, and it's the week before the new board is seated. So we don't have any business on the agenda for a work session on the 12th. So I was going to ask the board if we could consider canceling that. It seems it would be a little awkward to have one board sitting in a work session when that's not the board that's going to then meet on the 19th.
100% agree. I think that's a good idea to cancel it. Ms. Jenkins is a yes. Mr. Susan, yes. Mr. Prince, yes. All right.
So, Mr. Gibbs, since that's a calendar change, would we need to bring it to a formal vote at a business meeting? Correct. Okay.
All right.
That is all.
All right. As there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned.